Welcome back to Illustrator, week 2. Today we're going to go through chapter 3, using shapes to create artwork for a postcard. So we're going to do a few things. We're basically going to learn how to use the shape tools. We're going to understand what live shapes are. We're going to create rounded corners. We're going to work with the different drawing modes, and we're going to use image trace, which I think you're really going to like. So let's begin by opening a new file, or actually, I take that back. We're not opening a file. We're going to start from scratch. I'm just so used to clicking open. We are going to create a new document from scratch. So we're going to come over to our Create New button over here, or you could choose File, Create New. And in the resulting dialog box, you see that at the top there are several options. Some recent options, some that you've saved. If you're doing something for mobile, perhaps one of these setups is exactly what you're thinking of. So you know what? Here it is, ready to go. Web. When you do something for the web, it automatically knows that you're working in RGB color mode, red, green, blue, which is the light emitting from the device, and that we're going to be in 72 pixels per inch for anything that we have to rasterize for use on the web. If you're going to work in print, it knows that we have to be in the print color mode, which is CMYK, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, or registration. And it also knows that we need to work in high resolution, 300 pixels per inch, or dots per inch. So we're going to select this print category, and then we're going to come over here and we're going to look at the different measurements, and we're going to find over in this left-hand area, there's a letter preset, and we're actually just going to go with that. We notice that it's 612 pixels, points is a totally different measurement, by 792. So we're just going to let that go, and over here on the right-hand side where we have a chance to name it, we're going to go ahead and name it your name and then postcard. Instead of measuring in points, which is a print term and something that we will learn about and you'll learn about in design fundamentals and again in typography, we're going to switch to something a little bit more understandable. So go to the drop-down box and choose inches. And you can see it translates into inches, which is 8.5 by 11, which is exactly what you would expect for letter. The next section talks about bleed. And I'm going to not set this up in this step, and I'm going to show you how you can do it later if you forgot it. So we'll skip this for now. Back up here in the width and height, we're going to do some changing. We're going to change our width to be 6 inches. Hit tab twice to get down to your height, and we're going to change our height to be 4.25 inches. We don't need to type in the inches, that's already there. Then we see our orientation. Do we want it to be tall or wide? We're going to switch to the wide version, so it's 6 inches wide, landscape version. And then the number of artboards, the default is 1, and that's all we need right now. Notice if you need to scroll around here, there is a More Settings button, and we'll just take a peek at it. We're not going to do anything here, but we'll take a peek. Oh, the silence, there we go. All right, here's our more settings. Everything that we've done we see, the bleed that we skipped we see, and we can get to our templates from this window, but we really don't need this for anything right now. So we're just going to cancel out of that more. We're going to come back and simply say create. We have it set up the way we want at 6 by 4.25. So when this pops up, we're going to save it. And we're going to specifically save it to our Lesson 3 folder. So notice the name is here. We're going to do a File, Save As, and again, you have your choice of saving it to the cloud or to your physical computer, depending on what you're doing with this. The cloud is always safe because you can get to it from anywhere. This is just a practice file, so when we're done with it, we'll be done. So I'm just going to save it locally on my computer. And instead of being in lesson 2, I'm going to take a step back to the overall Illustrator book lesson file, and I'm going to switch to lesson 3. And again, our name is already there, so we're just moving it into the lesson 3 folder, and we're going to say save. Again, this pop-up are the defaults that are perfectly fine, so we can click OK. We're not going to backwards save it or do anything. So in the next window, we can click OK. All right. Over on the right in our Properties panel, we have a Document Setup button. Let's click that, and it's going to look very familiar. This is basically what we just worked with, but we have a chance to go back and make changes if we want to. So the thing that we do need to change is that this is a postcard that's going to be cut to 6 inches by 4.5. We're going to have a color on it, and we want that color to bleed off of the edges of the paper so that when it's cut, when it's trimmed down to this size, the color goes all the way to the edge. If we were to print just to this edge, or I'm sorry, put a color just to this edge, depending on where the cutting unit came down, it could be off by a little bit, and we could have some white showing. We don't want that. So whenever you print something and you have color going all the way to the edges, you have to expand the area, and that's called the bleed. And then you expand the color beyond the actual part that you're going to cut down. So that is the bleed. So in the bleed section right here, we're going to come into one of these numbers, and we're going to type in a 0.125. And notice, because this is locked over here on the right, it automatically filled in for your bottom, left, and right side bleeds as well. And that's exactly what we want. We want this amount, 1/8 of an inch, all the way around. So we're going to say OK. And now, I'll zoom out a step here. Now we have this red bounding box. This is where our bleed is going to go. So if we had a full photograph that we wanted to bleed off the edges and be able to be trimmed perfectly, we would actually place the photo or the colored background within these red boundaries, knowing that this 1/8 of an inch is going to get cut off at the end when they do the trimming. All right, fit your artboard in your window. If you haven't already, you need to be able to see everything that we have going right here, and we're going to move on to working with basic shapes.